Nearly 5 months after a Minneapolis police officer knelt on George Floyd's neck, killing him, and once again protesters marched here and nationwide demanding an end to systemic racism, Boston Mayor Marty Walsh is getting specific about his promises to reform policing in the city. This week he signed off on a series of proposals from a task force he convened in June, calling for an independent office for police misconduct with full investigative and subpoena powers, a new unit dedicated to diversity and inclusion, an expanded body camera program, greater transparency and public access, and clearer rules surrounding use of force with consequences for officers who break them.
We must be a city where every single person receives equal protection and equitable opportunities.
Walsh also set a 180-day timeline to enact the recommendations, which the task force called the floor rather than the ceiling on police reform. But as the state's chapter of the ACLU said in a statement, it remains to be seen whether the policies will be implemented over likely objections from police unions and how much it will inflate the police department's already enormous budget. Policymakers' work has only just begun. The group has been putting on the pressure for reform at the state level, too, in part with an initiative they launched last month called Police Violence Happens Here, which shines the spotlight on more than 100 cases they say they've identified over the past 10 years. Back in July, the State House and Senate each passed their own similar but separate reform bills, both of which would ban chokeholds, limit the use of tear gas, create a board to license all law enforcement officers, as well as a path to decertify officers for certain offenses. Each bill will also touch, though very differently, on so-called qualified immunity, which is the legal doctrine that effectively shields officers from being sued individually for excessive use of force in all but the most egregious cases. But more than 2 months later, we still have nothing to show for it. So, are the city and the state really committed to change? I'm joined now by the director of ACLU Massachusetts Racial Justice Program, Rahsaan Hall, and State Representative Russell Holmes, a member of the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, who's pushed for police reforms long before George Floyd. We also invited every single member of the Legislative Conference Committee working on this. 3 declined, and the others didn't respond. We invited the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association as well. They declined our invitation. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
If we can do a tale of 2 buildings, if you would, Boston City Hall and the State House, even mayoral challenger Russell Holmes, Andrea Campbell, said the mayor was going in the right direction, but some think we've seen this movie before. A task force after Ferguson in 2015 had some of the same recommendations. As you know, virtually nothing came out of it. Will this be different in 2020 in Boston?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think I've heard nothing but positive things from the community that I represent, obviously. And now the big question really does, to your point, comes down to what does Marty hear from all of the other communities. And so I feel like this is very much like the other thing he announced this week when it comes to what we're going to do about our schools. You're going to hear from Black and brown folks saying this is the right move. Now the question becomes, will he now hold firm that this is the right, fair, and equitable thing to do? Or will he now have to rescind? And, you know, in election year, we're hoping he makes sure he does that.
What's the answer to that question, Rahsaan? He's got the police unions on local level. He's got the legislature that's got to agree to amend civil service laws. Are those things going to happen?
That's the hope that they happen. But, you know, he has the mandate of the people that sent him to that office. And it is incumbent upon him to do everything he can to implement that, even if it comes to conflict with the police unions, which it ultimately will.
Well,
at least on this, I'm sorry, Russell. Yeah, Representative, go ahead.
The unions have already agreed. So all of the things in that conversation that you just listed, whether it be use of force, whether it be duty to intervene, whether it be some agreement around having some type of post system in place, most of those things, if not all of the things I just mentioned, obviously, are agreed. This question comes around 2 things. At the state level, they come around what are we going to do about qualified immunity and what are we going to do about the structure of the board. I'm saying land on a structure that has some police, some community folks. Clearly, the police are saying we're not going to sit around and have it so that the people who kick us off our jobs are all people who are anti-police from the beginning. And then they're saying we should have some people who are on the board that are for police. I say I agree. Have both. But let us move forward on that. And then on qualified immunity, I say I'm not going to land with Rasan, it's going to land with ACLU, but I do not want qualified immunity to take away all of the other positive things we've said. There are 4 other key components that we've had as agreement. Let's get those done, and let's get them done now.
You know, Russell Holmes, I can't believe you, of all people, are acting like this is a simple path from here to there. You've been at this for a decade. I remember the press conference, the Baker press conference you took over. I did the math, which was 4 months ago this Saturday. 4 months ago this Saturday. One, why are you not on the conference committee as the lead advocate for police reform on Beacon Hill? Why aren't you in that room?
Because I'm black and I'm a troublemaker. That's why. And so
well, that doesn't bode well for an outcome, does it?
It doesn't. But I can just simply say to you, it is easy. It's the point I'm making, Jim. They're making it hard. There are so many activists getting in front of the conversation. I'm sorry, Rasan, I don't even want to jump in here. But let me just say, we stood, the black, brown, Asian elected in this Commonwealth, and said, we should lead. The Speaker said we're going to let the caucus lead. The Senate President said we're going to let the caucus lead. And the governor said we're going to lead. Well, we're leading. And we've asked to get these things done. Now there's all these progressives and all of these unions getting in the way. Let us lead and get it done. That's what I mean by it being simple. It is simple.
Rasan, I hope the representative is right. But, you know, I look at the list of things, and I'm amazed that there doesn't appear to be a sense of urgency. Since this conference committee started, in Boston alone, we have learned, thanks to Globe reporting and others, that black officers in Boston are disciplined more than white officers. They're awarded less than white officers. We know about the stops of African Americans in the city, not to mention, let's bring politics into this, the most important constituency to Democrats, and the legislature is practically 100% Democratic, are African Americans. Am I wrong to think that there is no sense of urgency on this thing on Beacon Hill, Rasan?
Well, I don't know if you're right or if you're wrong, Jim, and I'm not sure that it's not about a sense of urgency, but it's a sense of commitment to ensuring that police reform happens in the way that it needs to happen. And I want to push back on Representative Holmes' contention that, you know, the caucus should have been leading on this. The people should have been leading. And even though the representatives and the members of the caucus represent the people, the way that this process happened, there were concerns and reforms that people wanted to see that didn't fall within the framework of those 4 things. And to the extent that there are activists and progressives that are in here raising a concern about what was not included in the bill, that's to get to some of the infrastructure of policing that does some of the most harm. And that issue around qualified immunity, but certainly other issues like racial profiling, and as well as some of the other issues around support. So I think there's...
Representative, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's expungement. There is licenses. There is justice reinvestment. We know them all. We've heard them all. And so I like ACLU, NAACP, Lawyers Committee. Thank you for doing your job. Unions, police, you've done your job. Now here's the problem. The legislature hasn't done our job. Jim, I'm sick and tired of hearing from the NBA, WNBA, NFL. Everybody wants to do something except for the people who should be doing something. Let me say, Jim, what you said. Black people are the most reliable folks to vote for the Democratic Party. Yet, when it was time for us to have this bill passed, everybody had been saying for years and years, no one votes against the speaker. But when it came to this black issue, they did. We could not get the House to be unified like it normally is unified with 120 or so votes. And so now people do vote against the speaker when they don't have black people in their constituency.
Do you think the speaker is not committed to serious reform, Representative?
I believe that the speaker still is trying to protect members who are running against Republicans and the like. But but that shouldn't be why we're making this decision. To your point, Jim, you know, we are the bedrock of this party. Deliver for us.
Rasan, one last thing for you, because you also obviously take a look through the ACLU at the big picture. What worries me is after we read that the Black Lives Matter movement is maybe the largest in the history of this nation, and obviously serious police reform was on the agenda. It's failing in Congress. It has failed in many cities where there were promises at least as bold on those in Beacon Hill. Is it possible that this is all going to come to nothing?
Nothing is a relative term because could be some things that get passed that some folks in the community would say that's not going to change my day-to-day life, so therefore it is nothing. And I think that's why activists have geared up around this, because there is this unique political moment to make it the most that it could possibly be. But I go back to this issue of the commitment to addressing the needs and concerns of the Black community. And when it comes to policing, it's clear, it's on the table. There's an opportunity to do something, and it needs to get done.
I'll tell you, if this is before a jury rather than legislators, the jury would come back in 10 minutes. Russell Holmes, Rasan Hall, as always, gentlemen, thanks so much. Good luck in your work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you.